Good morning. Would you stand and worship with us? When darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy out, when brokenness and pain is all I know, I won't be shaken. No, I won't be shaken. My feet doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your Jesus at the center of it all. From beginning to the end, it'll always be, it's always been you, Jesus. Jesus, oh Jesus, Jesus. Amen. be seated.
Good morning. We are really glad to have you here today. I am Marilee Bomar, and I am a facilitator of the Prime Timers, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in just a minute. So we are really glad to have you. If you are new or are a visitor, please make sure you stop by the Welcome Center out front. They have information for you. There will also be a chance to meet with Joni up front here after the service if you get a chance. So there's many ways to kind of get to know a little bit more about Woodcrest, including Welcome to Woodcrest is immediately after the service today, and it's going to be in the studio. So if you are new or you still feel a little newish, now we don't have any time limit on that, right? Take time to get to know the staff, answer questions, meet some staff, volunteers. If you need to be connected in some way, they will help do that. So take that next step and go and see them for Welcome to Woodcrest. That would be great. So as I said, I'm with the Prime Timers and I facilitate that. And right now, we're in the middle of the Share the Warmth campaign, so to speak. And so what we're doing is we are partnering with our Outside the Walls ministry here within Woodcrest. And what we're doing is collecting socks, gloves, and stocking caps. So I'm proud to say thank you to your generosity. We've met the sock quota, so to speak. We've got 100 pairs of socks or more. And we're over halfway there for stocking caps and gloves. So if you haven't had a chance yet, we're going to collect one more week, and then we're going to get that all processed because we will be sending those out at the next Fishes and Loaves opportunity, which is the 30th of November. So we want to get that done beforehand. So please, 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 we appreciate you and we thank you, but we are about halfway there on a couple things. So the other thing about that is we're really asking you to pray for those who are receiving these because they're in a place that we wouldn't want to have to be at the time. So we know that hard times come, and so we're just trying to get them prepared for the winter, which, by the way, you know, with the clock change and all that and the falling of the leaves, we are definitely there, right? So anyhow, if you get a chance, but we also appreciate what's been done so far. Thank you very much. So today, you're here for Kelly Wright to come and continue in the book of Ruth, and she's going to be teaching about that. She also has some nice things that I heard earlier. That's the privilege of being up here. I get to come early, I get to hear the band twice, and I get to kind of hear about the message. So I get a little cheat sheet is what I say. But before we get started, I'd like for you to pray with me, if you would. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the sunshine. We are grateful for each and every person here. We also appreciate all the sacrifices made by our veterans and thank them for their service. As Kelly comes up to teach, please open our hearts and minds for what you would have us take away for today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good morning. We have been exploring the story of Ruth and Naomi these last few weeks. So just a little recap. Naomi was Ruth's mother-in-law, and they were both widows in a place called Moab. And really, as widows, they had no future and no hope. They were really left to figure out how to survive without the security, protection, provision of their husbands. So Naomi decided to go home to Judah, and Ruth decided to go with her. Now, they didn't really go with hopes of starting a new chapter in their story. They went because they had nowhere else to go. And so I wonder, have you ever had a time in your life where you had nowhere to go? Now, I'm not referring to a night where you didn't have plans. This is more of putting ourselves in the story for a moment. Where have you gone when you literally had nowhere else to go? Now, you might say, I've always had a place to go, at least physically. You've had a home that you can stay in. And if this is you, thanks be to God. Because according to the World Economic Forum, it's estimated that there are about 150 million people worldwide who are homeless, which is about 2% of our world's population. So if you've always had a place to go, that is not something to take for granted. But for some of us here, we have been in a desperate situation where we had to find somewhere to go for physical shelter. Maybe it was sleeping in your car, a tent, maybe couch surfing at a friend's because you didn't have a place to stay. You had nowhere to go. But for a moment, let's even broaden this concept a little bit more. Maybe when you were running out of food, maybe you went to the food pantry. It was a place to go because you were hungry. Or maybe when you were in the lunchroom at school and didn't have anyone to sit with, you sat down with someone who looked friendly. It was a place to go when you felt lonely. Or when you were sick or injured, you went to the emergency room. It was a place to go to get medical care. Or maybe when you experienced depression or anxiety, had conflict in your marriage, or were experiencing challenges with your kids to a point that you didn't know what to do, maybe you started meeting with a counselor. It was a place to go when you were at your wits' end. So with all of these and many other times, you had to do something that moved you in a new direction. Not necessarily because you wanted to, but because you had to. You had nowhere else to go. And so for Ruth and Naomi, when they had nowhere else to go, they returned to Naomi's home in Judah. Judah was experiencing prosperity once again, and Naomi decided that it was their only chance for survival. But going home was dangerous for Ruth and Naomi. You see, it wasn't safe for women to travel alone, but again, it was really their only option. Plus, Ruth was from Moab, so going to Judah was going to a foreign land where she would be a foreigner. So she most likely would be rejected, looked down upon, making her physical and emotional survival questionable at best. You see, because even though it was Naomi's home, it wasn't Ruth's. For me, my home, or my hometown, is Sedalia. It's where I was born. It's where Hartley and I grew up, where we met, we got married there. It's home. But we left home in 1994 and we moved to Texas so I could go to seminary. And I have to say, moving to Texas was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I didn't know how I was going to survive moving away from home. And I remember talking with my mom just a few weeks before we were to leave, and I was having all of the emotions, and she gave me an encouragement. She said, Kelly, wherever God calls you is home. Well, when we think about home, we think about maybe the place that we were born, where we grew up. It's the setting for where our stories began. Or you might consider where you live now home. Really, home is the place where we feel loved and comforted and protected, where we feel most at home. And even when we say going home, we usually connect that to going back to the place we grew up. Now, if we all lived in a Hallmark movie, going home would be idyllic. We would pull into the driveway, the lights would be on in the house, there would be fire in the fireplace, there would be the smell of homemade chocolate chip cookies in the air. As we walked into the warmth, there would be smiles and hugs. But in reality, going home, at least to a setting like this, is something we really only see on TV. Also, for some of us, going home really isn't an option anymore because the home that we grew up in doesn't exist anymore. Our parents or family members have passed on, and there's no place to go that's home, at least in this sense. Or for some of us, there's been conflict that has created distance, so going home doesn't feel like an option. Or, of course, a variety of other challenges exist where home isn't home. And yet there is still a longing that we all have for home. No matter how amazing our home is, or even the feeling of home is here, all of us still have a longing for home that is never quite satisfied. And I think that's because our hearts were designed to find our home in God. Now, that may sound weird to think of God as home, but doesn't it also make complete sense when you consider what home means? Again, home is where we're comforted, where we're loved and protected. And friends, nobody comforts and loves and protects us like God. He even talks about being home to us in the Bible. We read in Isaiah 66, God says, "As a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you." Also in Matthew 23, Jesus said, when he was talking about Jerusalem, "How often I've longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings." You see, God designed us to find our home in him. He is home. Also, home is where our stories began, but our stories didn't begin with a home with an address, but our stories began in God. Our stories began in God, our true home, as God's beloved child. We read in Ephesians 1:4, "For he spoke us forth in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight." So God has created us, spoken us forth before creation to be in relationship with him, for us to find our home in him. Well, not only did he create us to be in relationship with him, but God also created us with unique personalities. We read about this in Psalm 139. David writes, "Oh yes, you shaped me first inside, then out. You formed me in my mother's womb. I thank you, high God, you're breathtaking. Body and soul, I am marvelously made. I worship in adoration. What a creation. You know me inside and out." So God created us with a unique personality to reflect him. So it's like when we pull into a neighborhood and we see a variety of different houses. They're all homes, but they're each unique with their own personality. Now, there is so much that I would love to share about the depths of our personalities. It's one of my favorite topics, but today I want to focus on 3 general categories for us to consider, and I want to invite you just to see which one might resonate with you. So first, some of us in the room today are helpers. So you love any opportunity to help and serve others. You show up and meet a need even before being asked. As a kid, you love to come alongside the adults in your life, either at home or school, and you love to just lend help and support to them. You were very responsible at a young age, and you also were the kids who couldn't wait to grow up. So these are our helpers. A second category are protectors. Protectors love to keep those that you love and care about safe and secure. You watch out for your people and stand guard as best as you can from letting any danger come in. As children, you weren't afraid to ask questions, push back, and express your opinion. If something didn't seem fair, you tried to let your voice be heard or make things right. And then third, some of us are individualists. So you love to stay kind of under the radar and do things on your own. You think deeply about life and others, about making plans, but others might not know it because a lot of times you just keep those things to yourself. And as kids, you enjoyed spending as much time as you could on the things that you had interest in. So for you, which one of these 3 resonates most with you? Are you a helper? Are you a protector? Are you an individualist? Well, because God created us with our unique personalities, we find ourselves at home then when helpers are helping, protectors are protecting, and individualists are thinking or contemplating. Now, if only we lived in a perfect world, these roles would contribute to such beautiful aspects of each of our stories for our sakes and for the sakes of others. But like all stories, challenges and brokenness disrupted the perfect intended storylines of our lives, and you and I have faced troubles and trials, heartaches and hurdles. So our hearts that were created to live in a perfect world have instead faced the brokenness of the fallen world. So instead of living life as the beloved child of God, where God is our home, we live life trying to make our home in what we do, attempting to earn love. So we play out our various roles in hopes of being loved. So in other words, I'll be loved if I take care of you, or I'll be loved if I keep you safe, or I'll be loved if I can survive on my own and not create any waves. But when we attempt to make our home out of the roles that we play, our helper and protector and individualist roles get skewed. So helpers become people pleasers when they believe they have to take care of others to be loved. So where helpers express love, people pleasers feel anxious. And in an attempt to reduce their anxiety, they do what they do best, they help, but they do so in a way to get love. So they believe that the more I help, the more I may be loved, which often leads to over-responsibility, codependency, and conflicts with boundaries. Protectors become controllers when they believe that they have to keep others safe to be loved. So where protectors express compassion, controllers feel angry. And in an attempt to deal with their anger, they try to control situations and others, believing that the more I'm able to control, the more I'll be protected, which leads to believing that their thoughts and feelings are more important than others. Kind of this, it's my way or the highway kind of thinking, often even bullying others around to get their agendas pushed through. And then individualists become withdrawn when they believe they have to survive on their own, where individualists express deep contemplation. When they're withdrawn, they feel fear. And in an attempt to deal with their fear, they fill their heads with more information, believing that the more I know, the less I have to fear, which leads to getting stuck in their heads. They struggle with putting their thoughts into action and can get stuck in analysis paralysis. So we slip into these skewed roles in an attempt to find our true home. But these roles exhaust us. The people pleaser gets tired of helping and becomes resentful. The controller gets tired of being the bad guy and can hold grudges and abandon relationships. And the one who is withdrawn gets tired of not knowing everything and can get bitter and reclusive. So I'm wondering if any of these are sounding familiar to you. Or I guess another way to look at this is, where are you finding yourself exhausted these days? Well, we see these roles play out in Ruth's story. For Ruth, she was the helper. Her name even means friend. So we see this helper role play out in so many ways in Ruth's story. She stayed faithful to Naomi. Again, she said, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you stay, I will stay. She worked hard in Boaz's field. She was very humble as she picked up the leftovers that were left in the field. She also did whatever Naomi told her to do in order to redeem her family line. Now, Ruth was a healthy helper, stayed faithful to what God led her to do instead of trying to do it all. She was a model of loving kindness, which is the beauty of a helper who finds their home in God. Now, Boaz was the protector. His name means strength. He was strong in character, and he protected Ruth by allowing her to glean in his fields. He told her, don't go anywhere else, just glean in my fields. Stay here with the women who work for me. He also instructed his workers to let her gather among them and to be kind to her. So again, Ruth was a foreigner, and so it was commonplace to treat foreigners poorly, and especially a woman who was a foreigner. But Boaz told them to be kind to her. Boaz also protected the family lineage for Ruth and Naomi by marrying Ruth. So Boaz was a healthy protector. He was open to the twist that God brought to his story. When this young woman, Ruth, approached him about marriage, he wasn't a it's my way or the highway kind of controller, but he was a model of compassionate strength which is the essence of a protector who finds their home in God. Now, Naomi was the individualist. When she decided to go back home, she wanted to go it alone. She wanted to stay under the radar and do things her own way. She was out of ideas and options and had no idea how she was going to survive. But Naomi, as an individualist, moved into the unhealthy side of her personality when she took on the attitude of bitterness. Now, this can happen to any of us despite our personalities. But she said to Ruth and Orpah, "It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." Also, when she arrived back home to Judah, she was so bitter that she told those who greeted her to call her Mara, which means bitter. She says, "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi's emotions and attitude of bitterness kept her from finding herself at home in God. And we get a glimpse into Naomi's theology in this part of her story. She believed that God was powerful and involved, that he was in control over her circumstances. But at this point, she didn't view God as loving or good. And I think we get this. A lot of times when things are going on in our lives, someone is to blame when we experience hardship or trials, when our dreams are shattered. And usually God is an easy target. And for some of us here, this may be where you are at. You might believe in God, even that God is powerful and involved. You might even believe that he is sovereign over every detail of your life. But you might see him more as a judge or a cosmic critic, not really caring at all about you, not a God who loves you and is good, and definitely not a God who is your home. But this is where we can all move into the unhealthy side of our personalities. When we experience the heartache of the fallen world, we can feel a lot of different emotions. And emotions aren't right or wrong, it's just what we do with them. But we feel so much that's maybe connected even to grief. We feel shock and anger and sadness and confusion. And yet if we don't work through these emotions, we too can become bitter. And that's because unprocessed feelings can become unhealthy attitudes, and unhealthy attitudes become undesirable behaviors and ultimately undesirable storylines in our lives. So we must process our feelings, we must evaluate our attitudes, and we must recognize undesirable behaviors in our lives. For Naomi, she felt sad, mad, confused, lost, and in despair. And as she held on to those feelings, they impacted her attitude. She said, "God has abandoned me. God has afflicted me," leaving her with the story she was telling herself: "There is no hope for me. My story is over." And so for us, let's illustrate this idea this way. Our life story is being written every day. Every chapter holds the twists and turns, the joys and the heartaches that we've experienced, really all the feelings and attitudes, our behaviors, and even the deep desires that we have. And oftentimes, the unmet desires or even the undesirable behaviors in our lives are really easier to recognize than the feelings. The feelings seem so small and insignificant, whereas the negative behaviors and the unmet desires are more in our face. Our attention is easily focused on what we don't have, which are our unmet desires, or what we don't want, which are our undesirable behaviors. So for example, is there anything in your present story that you wish wasn't going on? These are usually our undesirable behaviors. So is there anything in your story that you just wish wasn't there? Or maybe in someone that you love's life that you just wish wasn't a part of the story? Or is there anything that you wish was part of your story that isn't happening? These are our unmet desires, what we long for, but what aren't a part of our story, and we are concerned that they're not going to be a part of our story. Well, both of these are important to recognize and name, especially our unmet desires. And that's because these are the deep desires of our hearts. They're usually what we live for, they drive us, and they take a lot of our mental space. And when they go unmet, we have lots of feelings, we have lots of attitudes, and usually both are negative. And this usually leads to us becoming a part of undesirable behaviors in our lives. So for instance, all of us have the foundational desire to be known, loved, and accepted. And when that need goes unmet, helpers usually feel anxious, which then pushes them to help more. Protectors usually feel angry, which pushes them to control more. And individualists feel fear, which usually pushes them to withdraw. Now again, we see this in Ruth's story. All of Ruth and Naomi's desires seem to have died along with their husbands. But where Ruth was faithful and obedient, Naomi was bitter. And so for us to be faithful and obedient and to not become bitter, we need to process and deal with our feelings so they aren't barriers and impact our attitudes and ultimately keep us from finding our home in God. You see, when Ruth and Naomi went home, they had no idea what God had in store for them. But we know that God wrote their stories with such an incredible, happy ending. It was a storyline they could have never imagined. And that's really what God does when we give him the pen in our lives. When we let him write our stories, when we come home to him. Well, Jesus told a story of coming home when he shared the story of the prodigal son or the lost son. It's a story where there's a younger son who asked his father for his inheritance because he wanted to pursue life on his own. I think the younger son was an individualist. So he leaves home and he goes to sow his wild oats, only to be then destitute and broke. He ended up in a pig pen, envying the slop that the pigs were eating. But where does he go when there is nowhere else to go? He goes home to his father. I think the father played the protector role. The father was waiting for his son at the end of the driveway with open arms. There's also an older brother in the story. I think the older brother was the helper. He was faithful and always there to help his father. But he was resentful because the father welcomed his younger brother home with open arms. But there was a lesson in this story for helpers too. So friends, for each of us, we are all prodigals. We all leave home and go our own way. But today I believe that God is calling each of us home to him. And so as we wrap up today, I have an invitation for each of us to consider to come home for each of our personality types. So for you who are helpers in the room, first I want to say we are so grateful for you. You are thoughtful, empathetic, you know what we need before we even have to ask, and you take such joy in caring for us. And I would invite us, as we even think about the helpers in our lives, to even this week reach out to them and tell them how much you appreciate them and how much they mean to you. Helpers usually do so much on behind the scenes, but yet they don't get a lot of appreciation. But I know words of affirmation are really important to them. And so for those of us who are helpers in the room, first off, your temptation is to serve your way into pleasing God and others, exhausting yourself really in an attempt to be loved. And so an invitation for you to consider, to be authentic helpers, you must learn to rest. So in order to rest, I have two encouragements for you to consider. The first is to rest in God's love. I want you to know that nothing you do or don't do can make God love you anymore. He loves you perfectly. Also in Matthew 11, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So for the helpers, you must let God pour into you so that you can pour out to others. Now, you can't pour out of an empty cup. And just like we hear when we're on a plane ride, you have to put on your oxygen mask before helping others with theirs. But I know for the helpers that sounds completely selfish, but it's not selfish, it's taking care of yourself. And so to find rest in God's love. The second encouragement I have for our helpers is to rest in healthy boundaries. There's a great book, the Boundaries book by Cloud and Townsend. If you are a helper, I invite you, if you haven't read this book, get it and read it. If you have read it and you're a helper, get it out and read it again. It is so helpful. But it just provides a place to rest in healthy boundaries. And the illustration that they give is just how to keep the good in and the negative out, how to stay in your yard, knowing that you're responsible for your thoughts, your feelings, and behaviors, and that you can't be responsible for anyone else's. And so for our helpers, just to invite you to rest and trust that you are loved. Next, for you who are our protectors, first of all, we want to say you rock. You have a way of making us feel safe and secure in a world that seems unhinged. You move things forward to make the world a better place, and for that, we are so grateful. And again, as you think about the protectors in your life, I just encourage you to honor them, maybe even sending them a note, just encouraging them and telling them the things that you notice and the ways that they make the world a better place, and especially how they make your world a better place. And so for the protectors in the room, you have to watch, because your temptation is to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, not really trusting anyone but yourself, and living out of the belief that if it is to be, it's up to me. And so an invitation for our protectors. To be compassionate protectors, you must learn to release. Now, there are two areas that protectors really need to release or let go. The first is to release control. There is a very small but powerful verse in Psalm 46:10 that says, "Be still and know that he is God." And so for protectors, and I'm a protector, so this is as much to me as anyone else, it's hard to be still. When something is happening, our automatic response is just to kick into action. And yet God invites us first and foremost to be still and also to know that he is God. One thing I like to think of in this is to remember that I'm God's child, that he's the parent and that I'm the kid, that really I don't have control. He's the one with control. And so for those of us who are protectors, we need to release control. And then second, to release the pressure that you put on yourself. To remember that the weight of the world is on his shoulders, not yours. That he is working to make all things new in his time. And to remember, protectors, that we're human and we're going to make mistakes. And yet God is in control and we can trust him. And so for us as protectors, we need to release and trust that God's got it. And then for you who are individualists, we want to say first and foremost, we appreciate your thoughtfulness, your attention to planning. You are considerate. You help us explore creative details and strategies and options. You connect the dots to bring about solution that the world needs. And so as we think about the individualist in our lives, we want to appreciate them as well. And one way that they feel really appreciated is if maybe you're dealing with something and you need some input, go ask someone who's an individualist. They love to be able to give some of their creative ideas. Now we want to remember, don't put them on the spot. They like to have some time to give a thoughtful response. But if you are an individualist in the room, you need to watch, because your temptation is to live life on your own terms. And so an invitation to consider to our thoughtful individualist, you must learn to relate. And in order to relate, you need to embrace the truth that you were made for relationships. First, your relationship with God. Now, a lot of times for individualists, they have a relationship with God, but it's more about knowing about God and not so much about knowing God or experiencing God. And so I want to encourage those who are individualists this week to spend time with God. There's a great book by Gary Thomas called Sacred Pathways, and he lists 9 different ways to really experience your relationship with God. Maybe it's in nature, using your senses, having solitude with God, even today, like in our time of worship. But I want to encourage you to explore ways to connect with the one who created you to be in relationship with him. And then the second is to look at your relationship with others. I want to encourage our individualists to lean into community as much as you lean into time alone. And so what that might look like is kind of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit and to engage in ways to connect with others. And even around here, what that might look like is signing up to greet, or maybe joining a small group. Or I've got an invitation that could be really fun for you to consider. So this coming Tuesday at 6:30 in the gym, there's going to be a pickleball clinic. So whether you've played pickleball, you want to learn about pickleball, this could be a great way for you to push yourself out of your comfort zone and come and just relate with others. And so for individualists, we want to just encourage you to relate and trust that God's plans for you are good. So for all of us, whether we are helpers, protectors, or individualists, we really all come to a place where we're exhausted from living life on our own terms. We figure out that no matter how much we try to fill our lives with anything and everything else, it's really all slop compared to God's love and forgiveness. And when we do find ourselves in the slop, we find that it's actually the best place. Now, not to stay for too long, but to recognize that it's a space of redemption and an invitation to come home, where our Father is standing at the driveway with open arms. Let's pray. Well, God, we are grateful, first and foremost, that you invite us to see you as our home. God, that you love us, you comfort us, you protect us. And God, I know for each of us, we have a longing for that. And yet we try so hard to find that in other things, especially even in the ways that you've designed our personalities. So Father, for us, as we consider the personalities that you've given us, may we find ourselves at home in you so that we don't get these roles skewed where we're trying to live life on our own terms. Father, I pray that we would consider these invitations and that this coming week we could engage in our relationship with you in even deeper ways. And it's in your name I pray all of these things. Amen.
Heaven thundered, and the world was born.
I just want to mention a couple of things before we go. Like Marilee said at the beginning of the service, Welcome to Woodcrest is happening right as soon as you leave. And so that's in the studio. It's near the back of the building. If you still don't know where that is, grab one of us and we will take you there. And then as you leave this morning, there are volunteers at each exit with buckets, and you can place your tithes and offerings in those. You can also give via our app or our website. And so again, we're so grateful for your generosity. Everything that happens here, first, is because of God, and second, because of your partnership with him in giving. So thank you for coming, and we will see you next week.